Welcome. It is so good to see you. I think the last time I saw you was in London, right? At the
That's right.
summit.
That's it. We were at Marble Arch and then we um, conducted a very robust and brilliant session. It was very good. I enjoyed it. Lots of
Thank
networking,
you.
wasn't it?
Yes,
Brilliant.
it was. That's what it's
Was yeah.
about. It's about
Yes,
education and networking.
that's correct.
Definitely,
Yes, yes,
definitely.
yes,
It's so
yes,
good to
indeed.
see you. How's London?
So,
How's the weather?
well, it's mild in comparison to New York, which is snowing. We
Yes.
are fortunate enough as we go south, it's not too bad.
Good.
I haven't seen any snow yet at my neck of the woods, but further afield when you go up north, it's sometimes it's it's sort of get a bit snowy.
I think you
And
sent the snow our way. We had snow the day after Christmas until New Year, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I didn't need to go anywhere, so I could just look at it out the window.
oh, so nice. So right, so
Oh,
good.
well, I'm so excited about today because we're going to hear a bit about who Kevin Tomlin is, a bit about your
Yes,
background, and a
yes.
little bird tells me that you lived in Jamaica. You know, that's where my parents are from.
That is true. That is true.
Oh.
I migrated to Jamaica in the early 70s during the Ted Heath years, when the Conservatives were in power at that time. And of course, Michael Manley was the kingpin, political. There was the prime minister, and of course, he had a close relationship with Castro, etc.
Mhm.
So I went to Jamaica during that time. Of course, my parents is from there originally,
Yeah.
but they came to the UK during 1955.
Oh.
Yes, my dad, yeah, and my dad was one of the Windrush generation people during that time. So
Mhm.
he was a key, should I say, a key individual to the resurrection of the uh, revival or improvement of the British economy because the infrastructure, a lot of things were damaged during World War II.
Right.
So
Right.
a lot of Jamaicans and people from other parts, different parts of the Caribbean, from Trinidad and Tobago,
Mhm.
and so forth, and all the other islands came to the UK because at that time, as you know, it's still under the British Empire.
Right.
Yes,
Mhm.
uh, and so they were called to come over to work in the NHS,
Yeah.
in
It's
education,
the National
which
Health System, the
yes,
NHS.
national,
Yeah.
yes, that's right,
Yeah.
and so forth. And when these Jamaicans and from Trinidad and Tobago came over, so on, they trying to bring over their cultural richness and experience, of course,
Mhm.
uh, to impact the UK, which they did, because a lot of them became the people who my generation, we
Yes.
came from,
Yeah.
and we impacted the British industry, which I will talk about that in great detail. But yes, my dad is one of the last surviving uh, of his contemporaries in terms as a clergyman, as a bishop. He's one of the last because you could say, uh, he was involved in founding several churches in the inner city of London. Yes.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, listen, I've been to Jamaica twice, and I'm
Yeah.
telling you, the food, that's
Yes.
what I miss the
Yes.
most. I'm in Seattle, and I don't get much opportunity to have Jamaican food unless I cook it myself, but I miss the food.
Yes. Well, okay. When we talk about Jamaica, it's quite interesting because it was there that my creative flair and interest started. Um, I went to a secondary school. Remember, I was educated both in Britain
Yeah.
and in Jamaica. So I
Yeah.
came to Jamaica about in my early teens, well, I should say. I was
Hmm.
still in secondary school. I went to a boys' school called Catford Boy, which doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's in southeast London,
Yeah.
but it was quite interesting because the principal for the art school used to teach at one of the other schools in the neighborhood. And
Mm.
so when he discovered that I was a former Catford Boys student, he said, "Oh, this is exciting." because my dad came to the interview for art school, art further education, and he said, "Yes, your work is up to standard to actually enter to study art school." So I have two formal training as well as a teacher, formal training in Jamaica, and then I got more qualification when I went to the UK. So, and I've taught both in Jamaica and in the UK and the US
Wait,
as well.
you taught, so you were a teacher?
Yes, I was an art teacher in Jamaica.
Nice,
Yes.
nice.
Yeah.
So when you talk about art, you're training in fine art.
Oh, yes, fine arts. And of course, the spin off in terms of textiles, etc., because that can go the whole, yeah. Because when I was at art school, we learned all the disciplines, the
Mm,
creative disciplines as such.
yeah.
Yes, in terms of graphics, art, illustrations,
Mhm.
textiles, fashion concept. And another thing too, when I was at art school, we mingled with the musicians. So we do cross fertilization
Oh,
constantly.
wow.
We do the backstage design.
Yeah.
With doing the theatre and theoretical production.
Right,
And
right.
so I mingled a lot with the drama students and the music students. That's how I get to meet Roberta Flack, you see, when she came over. Yeah,
What?
she came over. That all those things impact me what I do today. She came
Yeah.
over just after she did the classic track with the late Donny Hathaway, "The Closer
Hmm.
I Get to You."
Yes.
and she
Ah!
and she actually when she came to the art school or the cultural arts centre, as they call it, at Otterwin Drive.
Yes.
When she came out of her car, she was chauffeur driven, of course. She's quite
Of
stunning.
course. Of course.
Oh,
Nice.
and she's so elegant. And she said, "Do you know how to get to the lecture theatre?" I said, "Oh," and my friend didn't realize we were talking to her at first. He said, "Hang on a minute, this is Roberta Flack." Oh my God, because I'm right in front of her face. And I said, "You joking?" I said, "Yes,
Oh,
Roberta. It's actually round it, and we were going to be there as well." She said,
your best
I said,
British voice. Oh, how
and
fun.
so she was there for about an hour or
Yeah.
two, and she was talking about her whole production process, how she actually structures the songs and the people she's worked with. She had a keyboardist and bass player there, so they were talking, really getting down to nitty gritty how to put it together, the rhythm section. And I said, I'd like to know about this. The interesting thing when I was in Jamaica as well, I
Yeah.
saw Third World Live,
Right.
the Jamaican band. So
Hmm.
I was going to actually, and then when I was there as well, I did some of my practice teaching at in Trenchtown.
Oh my word.
Yeah, yes,
Wow.
yeah, and also, I know it's actually crazy. I used to frequent the different studio, like Studio One
Yeah.
and Tough Gang, the Bob Marley legendary studio, which the family owns. So I used
Yeah.
to frequent those and see those things.
Yeah.
And also what was interesting as well, I remember when Bob Marley began to emerge, we saw his home in Tivoli Garden, and when they were trying to assassinate him as well,
Right.
and
Right.
the escape. So, and the interesting thing about it as well is that while I was in Jamaica as well, when we get a chance, we were listening to the sound that was coming out of Philly and Chicago, the
Mm-hmm.
Curtis Mayfield,
Mm.
Gamble Enough sound, and all the
Hmm.
different sounds coming from Miami, the Miami sound, as well as the Detroit Motown sound. So I was
Right.
listening to all of that. And what fascinated me, I said, all of them have their own musical individuality. That's
Right.
interesting. They're all playing the same keyboard, but it is different.
Yeah.
So I look at the credits, and I think what impacted me more was the legendary Rex Neckerford,
Hmm.
one of the great Caribbean intellectual minds of the day. Oh,
Okay.
it's truly a masterpiece. He was,
Yes. Yeah.
and we had the privilege in my last year at college to have a lecture series with him, and I
Yeah.
decided that I'm going to study Black history, music of Black origin,
Right.
because all he did is just talk, no notes, just fold his leg and just deliver. completely. He was a genius, basically
Yeah.
one of the great intellectuals of the Caribbean intellectuals. Yeah. So yeah,
Wonderful. I can
that is
imagine
a
some of
summary.
I can imagine some of his stories. So I can see some artwork behind you. Is
That's
that
correct.
art pieces that you've done? You've drawn those?
Yes, several of those were actually executed during the lockdown. Hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I did about, as I would say, about 15 or so at various different sizes during the
Yeah.
lockdown, and they're
Mhm.
all musical themes. I will show you eventually. Show you. Some of them talk about songs in the key of life. The sort of Stevie Wonder's creative series. During the early '70s. Then I
Yeah.
talk about the Barry White, his signature sound, his lush impact on romantic music.
Hmm.
Then I've done artistic interpretation of Benjamin Wright Jr., one of our great string and horn arrangers.
Hmm.
Actually, he's a practicing Christian, actually.
Oh,
And Benjamin Wright Jr. is one of the few um, classically trained men to actually conduct the orchestra on 2 occasions at the Nobel Peace Prize. He's a
wow.
black brother. He's a black brother from the West Coast. Well, he's not originally from the West Coast. That's the way. And he was the same person who did "Stop Till You Get Enough" for Michael Jackson. That's his
Yeah.
string master. String.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. But anyhow, that is a summary there.
So I'm
Yes,
so interested. I want to go back to when you mentioned the Windrush, and our parents came from the Caribbean, and in
yes,
London
that's
we're
right.
called Afro Caribbeans. We're not called African
Yes,
Americans.
yeah.
Um,
After,
but
mm,
I want to hear about the impacts on the church and on the music, because I know,
hmm
a lot of these artists nowadays, they come out of the church, and I
That
know
is
that in
indeed
London, a
correct.
lot of
Yes,
them
yes,
have
yes.
played with mainstream artists. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and some of the
Okay,
music?
right. You mean some of the practitioners, as we call them? Yes.
Yes,
All
please.
right. Okay. Let us look at a few. Of course, you have Fix McIntyre, who was the founding keyboard player for Simply Red. Yes. He's from the church. Did you know that?
What? I
Simply,
didn't know that.
yes. Yes, he's from the church. His father was a legendary bishop. Oh God, Jeremiah McIntyre. Darling, that is a different story there. He was my dad's close friend. We used to, with Fix McIntyre, I grew up together. He's about the same age as me. He's a year younger.
Yeah.
And I remember from the early days uh, where he told us, he shared with us that my friend Alfred Hallen mentioned, because he knew the family as well. He said
Hmm.
it wasn't uncommon for Fix McIntyre to constantly playing the keyboards, the grand piano in his parents' home, because his dad, you see, was a multi instrumentalist. He could play the sax, and
Yeah.
he was a brilliant conductor and songwriter himself.
Yes. Yes.
And let's look at Fix McIntyre a little bit more. He's from the New Testament Church of God, which is one of the Pentecostal churches that was a Pentecostal movement, which is about over 60 years old now in the UK.
Yeah.
And so Fix McIntyre, both mum and dad were musical, they had a brilliant musical flair. They were
Hmm.
absolutely formidable. What I do remember of the late Bishop Jeremiah McIntyre. And um, so Fix was the architect for what you call the Highgate Choir, which that is one of the first, what you could say, British choirs, black
Yeah.
choirs, that actually came out of the church and had a more or less a recording contract somewhat.
Oh,
And there's interesting, it was produced in Birmingham,
yes.
and Fix McIntyre and his sister did the arrangement and the old syncopation, the old structure of the music. It was a very funky sort of gospel, according to, you would say, according to the Hawkins family, the Hawkins,
Yes.
sort of love of life, that deep funk beat and so forth.
Right. Right.
Then
Right.
at the same time they were doing that, there was another choir, which I would say the arranger was my godfather's son, Steve Thompson. Oh, yes. Yeah,
Wow.
so called the Majestic Choirs. And the Majestic Choir did tour the US, by the way. Mm.
Awesome.
And during the
Oh,
80s, they toured the US, and the two choirs are somewhat different. One has a more one is funky, which they're from Birmingham as well. I call
yeah.
it Birmingham's gospel signature sound.
Oh,
So one is more funky, with all the influence of Fix McIntyre, and
hmm.
the other one do with Steve Thompson and his arrangement. They're two different arrangements, but highly expressive and
Yes.
great delivery. So
Wow.
yeah. So,
Wonderful.
but with Fix McIntyre, which is interesting, he went on to become an impact with Simply Red. Actually, they begged him on about 3 or 4 occasions to join the group.
Yeah.
He's basically a keyboard wizard, right?
Wow.
And
Simply Red is a multi.
Simply Red became the 13th most successful British act in history. Remember, at the height of their game, they
Yeah.
each album did about 3 million copies in Europe alone, darling. Three
Wow.
million copies, 3 million copies,
Wow.
and they sold several million copies in the UK.
Yeah.
And with Fix McIntyre, if you want to hear his keyboard delivery, just listen to "If You Don't Know Me by Now." That's him on the
That's a
keyboard.
classic. That's a classic.
That's
It's a
him
classic.
doing an
Yeah.
interpretation, the Simple Red interpretation,
Wow. Wow.
and it went number 1 in the US, and it sold 1 million copies again
Oh
because
my God.
yes.
And you talk about Europe, you talk about the UK, you talk about the
Mhm.
US. I just want people to understand like the magnitude of the UK market, as it
Okay,
relates
right.
to America.
The UK market is the third largest music market in the world. It's a serious operative. Matter of fact, some of the international bodies that govern the music industry globally is based in London. Mm.
Mm,
And so the UK is vitally important. If the UK's music market is sort of not doing very well, it affects globally because most of the top songwriters like the Elton Johns and Paul McCartney, etc.,
mhm,
is
mhm.
based here. Some of
Yeah.
the most brilliant string arrangers, like the London Symphony Orchestra, which does the Lord of the Rings and so on.
Yeah.
I've actually been in the studio where they did it, Abbey Road. Yeah,
I
and
wanted to go to Abbey Road. I didn't get a chance.
it's very interesting. It's got some interesting acoustic the arrangement. So if they wanted to do, say, the Star Wars films, they actually a lot of this the tracks are done there, or
Yeah.
the scores as they call it, because
Right.
the acoustic is absolutely brilliant. You can fit in about 60 string players, orchestra.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
actually divine when you hear the strings are going. So, but anyhow, the music industry, as I said, is the third largest. The last figure I acetate, it did
Mhm.
about the last figure was about close to £6 billion. £6 billion in terms of movement of through streaming and hard copies. Britain has one of the biggest um, vinyl markets in the world because vinyl is on the rise.
Yeah.
So listen to this.
Hmm.
In terms of the in terms in terms of the gross earning, about £2 billion worth of that is creative exports. That means the Adele, Eddie Sheeran, and Sam Smith, and so on, and
Hmm.
all the other artists. They're they're creative. Actually, Britain has some of the biggest selling artists globally, and of course you have uh, when I talk about, say, Lawrence Johnson,
Oh
this is just
yes.
tip.
Oh my
Oh, this
goodness.
is darling. This is
We're
just
going
tip of
back to
the
my
iceberg.
favorite track.
Yeah,
We're going back
yeah,
to my favorite
yes,
song.
yes. We go. This is just tip of the iceberg
Yes.
in terms of my phone is keeping going, so I need to
That's
silence it a
okay.
bit. Yes.
Yeah, Lawrence Johnson was instrumental in forming the group New Colors, and
Yes,
Greater
that's
Love
right.
is my
Yes. Matter
favorite
of fact,
song.
yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting thing with Lawrence Johnson is that he's probably one of the most successful. Not to mention, there's several people. There's another person that you need to actually talk to when you get the chance. It's
Mhm.
Charmin
Yeah.
Elliott, a very
Okay.
great, what we call vocal architect. She's a brilliant. She's almost at the same level and beyond as Luther Vandross. She's a technocrat when it comes to vocal arrangements,
Ooh, we'll have
and
to get her
she's
on the next. We'll have to get her on the
yeah,
next episode.
yes, and she's also an artist manager for a lady in the US. So she does cross the board, and she's
Mm.
done she's done backing and vocal arrangements for Temptations and the Four Tops and so on. Oh
Wow.
yes.
Awesome.
She's
Awesome.
actually done work with Shakin' Stevens. She was one of the
Yes, I remember Shaking
oh
Stevens
yes.
when I was a kid.
Right. Okay. She did work with yeah. So um, as I say with going back to Fix McIntyre, what is interesting here? Let's put this thing in perspective with the UK market.
Yes, please.
Yes, let's put this in perspective. The UK market is actually one of the main heartbeats of the industry globally. Matter of fact, in front of Britain in terms of market, global market segment or size is Japan, and then US comes first,
Yes.
right? If you think about the £6 billion that the UK does, it's equivalent to about nearly 9 billion US dollars
Mm,
or maybe
mm,
more.
mm.
That's quite sizable actually,
Oh, yes, that's
because the
significant.
US, yes, because the US does about 12 billion.
Right.
Mm. And Japan does something in between, and then the fourth largest market is Germany,
Mm.
and the fifth is France, and the list goes down, and
Yes.
then Brazil would be the 10th. Oh
Mm.
yeah, right. These are some of the most recent data, because I checked data
Yes.
now. um Also with Britain, just to let you know that there are black labels in Britain that has been around from the 90s, like
Mm.
Kinship Records. Was founded in 1998, and it's very active.
Yes.
It gets royalty checks as far as South Africa and different parts of the world and the
Mm.
Pacific Ring. Its
Yes.
founder, yeah, and
Awesome.
its founder is um, Rodney King. And he's part of the old school. He's one of the key. Um, and then so you got his production. You've
Yes.
probably seen it with his wife Sonia King. That's
Yes.
with that groovy
Hmm.
track. So that's kicking off, and it's getting bigger each time because more people are requesting. So
Yes.
and then on top of that, you've got Elliot Brown and Richard Forbes, who they're probably the godfathers of Brit funk, right? They're
Mm.
going back from this. They're going back from the 70s. They're going back, and they have actually worked with Fix McIntyre. So and Barris Crawford,
Hmm.
Beckford. These people, as I talk about these people, they're part of what we call the signature sound of Birmingham. Then you
Okay.
have then you have a gentleman by the name of Roger Moore, who I've worked with the videos. He's part of that movement, and he
Now,
works off.
Kevin,
Yeah,
Roger
go
Moore,
on.
is that Roger Moore with Xfinity?
Yes, extra.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a
That is
radio
a serious
show.
brother. Yes.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about Roger Moore, he does his recording session at the legendary Black-owned studio in Answorth.
Wow.
Legendary Black-owned studio,
Mm-mm.
Black-owned, darling. That's
Yes.
where I've
Yes.
done some of my recording,
Yes.
right?
That's good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So there's a lot of actually behind the scene movement in terms of production and labels that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
We haven't touched Nicky Brown. We haven't touched some of Lawrence Johnson stuff and
Right.
all
Right.
the other. And
That's
there's
on
another
me.
person, Basil Mead, and then you talk about Luke Smith, who
Oh, yeah.
worked with Luke Smith, who worked with the late George Michael on tour. He was
Yes.
one of part of his musical director, and Amy Winehouse and LaFleur and all these people. So
And
there
they're all
is
from the church. They're all
yes,
from
yes,
the
the
church.
church. Actually, the late Jason Toomer, sorry I miss him, he died recently.
Mhm.
Who worked with Stephanie Mills, said that two key places that have some of the profound and impacting musician is from the church and the jazz community.
Wow.
Full stop.
Full stop.
And full stop. There's no
Period. Full
debate.
stop.
There's no debate.
Right.
And of course, when I talk about my book, I do talk about the brothers that came from the church and the impact. The production teams, the songwriters. They're
Yes.
all
Yes.
from the church. Even if they didn't go to church, their grandmothers and uncles were deacons and
Yes.
ministers.
Yes.
Like Curtis Mayfield, everybody had somebody, whatever.
Yeah. So let's talk about, you are a published author. You've recently published a book. Can you share about your book? The title, what is it about? Congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Well, actually, I published 3 books last year.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
Awesome.
the
Good.
first one I published was The Icons of New Orleans. Well, that's rather interesting, because out of there you had the Little Richards and Fats Domino.
Yeah.
And I don't know, people are not aware of it, that Fats Domino was the superstar of the 50s. He could compete with Elvis Presley,
Yes.
that level. And what I've discovered with Fats Domino, he sold about over 60 million copies.
Wow. Didn't he do Blueberry Hill? Was that
Yes.
Fats?
Oh, yes.
My dad used to play that all the time.
Well, let's put it this way. Let's put it this way. Fats Domino did frequent Jamaica quite a lot and jam with the Jamaican musicians, apparently. Yes, he frequented there. That was his sort of base for relaxation and jamming with our brothers and sisters over there.
Yeah.
Now with New Orleans, it's quite fascinating, because New Orleans was the first city, that urban area, to create a signature sound. Right? To create a body of work that is synonymous to that city. Does it make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Yes.
Yes. And the gentleman who did the sound facilitator was a guy by the name of Cosmo. Well, when you read my book, you understand. He was Italian descent, brother. And he realized that there was a studio that was needed to facilitate the talent, the local. And most of the musicians who worked with in the studio were jazz trained musicians. Yes, they were jazz trained. David Bartholomew, who died at 100 years old, he was what you call the scout and A&R man for Imperial and Specialist, because you had the West Coast label, these independent labels were always scouting out for raw talent.
Right.
And so, Lloyd Price and all of them were discovered. And David Bartholomew, who would be regarded as a Quincy Jones, was the creative power broker of the time. He's probably one of the most successful unknown Black executive and production people. He wrote jointly with Fats Domino. So all those classics that you hear, most of them were, and one of the gentlemen who produced Little Richard, he was the same gentleman who produced Sam Cooke's number 1, Honey You Sent Me.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got, okay, that's all those information is in my first book. Now the second book is quite interesting. Memphis Sound, the Icons of Memphis. That includes Al Green, Isaac Hayes and Porter production, Willie Mitchell production, and Booker T and the MG, the studio musicians that defined the sound. I talk about that and the different songwriting production team that emerged out of that city and how it impacted Rod Stewart and so forth. Right?
Awesome.
A lot of them from the church. Yes. Notice I said the word from the church.
Yes.
And interesting thing about that city in particular, the Willie Mitchell family still owned their own recording studio that the Al Green Classics came up. It's still owned by them. Yes, still
That's,
there.
that's
It's
great.
still there. The
Yeah.
original building where Puppy Willie did all that production run. It's
That's
still
great.
there, which is
Awesome.
a powerful legacy. It's powerful. That's
That's right.
powerful. That's still owned in black hands, and
Yes.
it was a place that did. And up to today, several white artists go there to get their recording done.
Awesome.
Right,
Wow.
that family
That's great legacy.
it's run by Willie Mitchell, the late Willie Mitchell's son and
Yeah.
sister, and so forth. Fantastic.
Fantastic.
So,
Mhm. So
as
your
of
current book.
yeah, my current book. Oh, Lord. My current book has to do with Muscle Show.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Muscle Show is quite interesting because that's where Rita Franklin did her first million seller of her career.
All
Where
right.
this beautiful sister became to emerge, you know.
Yes.
I
Yes.
never
Yes.
love a man the way I love you.
Yes.
When she came out of that, when she recorded that, both the album and the singles did 3.5 million that year in 67. And it was the same year, that the US music industry hit the $1 billion mark and never returned.
Wow.
Yeah, so Rita Franklin stroke Motown and then was significant to the industry growth. So when Aretha exploded, she was the best-selling artist of that time, that period.
Wow.
Barbra Streisand couldn't come close to her at that time. She was on top of the game. That 67.
Yeah.
I mean, 67, between 67 to 69, Aretha Franklin was on the album charts. All her albums on 59 weeks. 59 weeks. All of those came through.
That's
and yeah, so she sold millions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. So listen, where can we purchase your book? Because we believe in supporting, not just, yes, giving you a kudos, but we want to support you. Where can we purchase your book from?
Well, it's all in Amazon, actually. We're using Amazon at the moment. Of course,
Amazon.
we're going to Amazon. We're going to use different,
Yeah.
should I say, publishing outlets over time. But I thought it was rather key to use Amazon because it has a fairly decent distribution. You know, it's the big boy, so you don't want to. I'm not going to pretend that I'm big enough to do it myself. So I learned to actually get on the backs of those who have done it before.
That makes a lot of sense.
That is a very key wisdom.
And that's a key statement.
Yes,
That's a key
because
statement.
why do you want to reinvent something that is there, a platform? Because yes, beforehand, we as independent publishers did not have that facility, you know.
Right.
But now things are different. We don't have to be refused publication by any major publication. Cool. We can actually go through the back door because it's an even playing field. And use the expertise of Amazon, etc. Oh, okay.
Amen.
Right.
Amen.
You can
they can search your name on Amazon, Kevin Tomlin, or they can search the name of your book, which is called
Icons of New Orleans, Icons of Memphis, and Icons of Muscle Show. And by the way, they can preview it as well on my website in the publication page and also in the shop. Yeah, so they can actually, once you click the link, it directs them over to Amazon to where they can actually purchase it in actual ebook form or paperback. Print on demand, it's all there, yeah. And also as well, I'm planning to do audio publications.
That would be amazing. I'd like that, yeah. So your website is www.signaturesoundsonline.com/6.
Well, no, it's .com/6 is the .com/6 is actually Instagram page.
Oh, okay.
But, but
.com.
.com. Yeah.
We'll put it in the
chat. I made a mess up with that. It's just a long story because it should have been just
that's okay.
.com, but that's another story. Lack of my technical skills, you know, is it? But my niece sort of saved the day. You know, they're quite savvy, aren't they?
That's right. These younger generation, let's
yes,
let's mentor them, let's support them, let's utilize them, train them. Yeah, I believe in all
He
of that.
was actually my son, who is a senior software engineer, principal software engineer.
Oh,
He actually helped me to, get on board. Really, he told me how to. He introduced me, Dad. This is what you need to do, and I'll let you go. I'm always there in the background if you need technical. He's a wizard, actually. Yeah,
that's good. Oh, I
major,
need to
major
talk
boy.
to
He's a
him.
major power broker. But anyhow,
Wonderful.
mm,
So listen, we touched on it a bit earlier, but the choirs in London, because we have LCGC, and I want to mention Basil Mead. Basil was given a commendation by the Queen. So
that is
he's
correct.
now an
Yes,
MBE, a member of the British Empire. And we're
that's very
so
significant. Yes,
excited with him. We
yes,
congratulate him because he's done a lot of work. And,
yeah.
there's other choirs in London that you probably know more about the choirs than I do, but LCGC is one of the longest standing choirs.
Well, yes, there are. And LCG is one of the more visible ones, but we need to, and it's been still around for a long time as a commercial choir as such.
Mhm.
But some of the other choirs that is significant around that time is the Majestics,
Mhm.
Majestic Singers, which came out of the New Testament Church of God, and Highgate Choir. There's several choirs that come out. Of course, my cousin John uh, Fisher, he's another key power broker. He's my cousin, actually.
I
Yes,
didn't know John was your cousin. I love
yes,
John Fisher. IBMC,
yes. That's
individuals
right.
dedicated
That
to the ministry of
yes,
Christ.
that's right. Yeah,
Yes.
yes,
Oh,
yes,
I've been
yes,
knowing
yes.
John for a long time.
That's right. Yes, that's
And
right.
before you go on, he was also given a commendation by the Queen, a
That is
BME.
correct.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Yes,
Awesome.
yes. There's several.
Congratulations,
Yes,
John.
and I mean, me and John, in terms of his father,
Hmm.
his father was quite an accomplished musician, you know. Oh
Oh,
yes, oh yes, oh
yeah.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah, the Glory Brown Brothers, that was a vocal group, a band that was
Hmm.
instrumental in the early days at a convention and so forth. We have a lot of information we can share about these people who um, learned from their parents and actually
Yes.
went on to become because you have the Luke Smith from Manchester who
Hmm.
my dear, we could go on all night really, because
Yes.
we're just touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of what gospel actually does behind the scene, because
Right.
remember, and don't forget about Karen Gibson as well,
Right. The Kingdom
because
Choir.
the Kingdom Choir is a
Yeah.
vitally important, significant choir, which
Yes.
has a cultural impact internationally. So you have these several different segments, and they all these people do serious behind the scenes stuff.
Hmm.
That board of directors for the Gospel Music Industry Alliance, which I am a board of director. Roger Moore is the actual one, and of course you are the lovely lady Audrey Gray, who is doing an absolutely
Yes.
brilliant job
Yes. Yes, and
behind
we'll
the
hear
scene.
more
Yes.
about that on
Oh
our
yes,
second series. But the GMIA is the industry body in the UK, the Gospel Music Industry Alliance, and you can
that's
find
correct.
them on Facebook, GMIA UK, or on their website. And we want you to become a member. Become a member. They put on a lot of educational programs.
That's correct.
It's just fantastic. I'm a member of the GMIA, and
Oh, fair. That's great. We're
yes,
glad
yes.
to have you. Well, lovely, lovely,
It's
lovely.
been very informative for me. So go find them on social media.
Yes, yes, that's
Yes.
correct. Yeah.
Hmm.
The potential of the gospel sector is unlimited, really, because it's one of these sectors that is emerging. It hasn't matured yet, and
Hmm.
it will be a great facility for emerging gospel artists who come here. A lot
Yes.
of platform, and just to say this, there's a gentleman who is, well, originally not a gospel artist, but he's from the church at Impact. He's um, Kanye West. Kanye West, two gospel albums have done silver certification now in the UK, and they've been number one. Donna is still number one as we speak. It's still number one in
Wow.
the UK. Still on
Oh
the
my God.
Christian gospel official charts. Yes, it's still number
Wow.
one,
Wow.
and he's the uh, Jesus is King has
Mhm.
been on the gospel charts in the UK for 116 weeks.
Wow.
It's phenomenal. He's actually helped with gospel in a way internationally, because he just came from left field and just,
Right.
well,
Exactly.
Kanye West is Kanye West anyhow. So that's another.
Well,
But
you
yeah,
know,
that's it.
one thing, Kevin, that I've realized when I'm in London is that quartet music is not well known. It's not so visible in the UK, and I'd loved, some of the quartet music to be on radio in London. But yeah, we'll talk about that maybe on our second session.
Yes, yes,
So
yes,
the
yes.
different
There's
styles of
yeah,
music and the
yeah.
radio plays and
Oh,
things like that. But
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
this has
Yes.
been such an amazing time. It has been awesome. You've got such a wealth of knowledge. There's so much knowledge and information that you have, and we want to pack it all in. But what I want to do is I want to come
Yes.
back and have a part
Okay.
two. I
Yeah,
want to
that'd
have
be
a part
fine.
two so
Yes,
we can
yes,
share
yes,
some more.
yes,
But I'm going to leave you with just a few closing words.
yes.
Whatever you'd like to say to those that are watching, those that are tuning in. I'm going to give you a moment just to talk to them, or encourage them however you feel.
Yes, that'd be fine, actually. Whatever your dream is, the most important thing is to become a true master of it. I usually tell my students, be the top 5% in your chosen discipline. Actually shift to the highest level you can and move. Study as the Bible said, study to show yourself approved. Study, because when you do that, you become unstoppable. People, whether they don't like you or not, they will listen to you because you're truly a master and authority of what you do. You must be passionate, you must be disciplined, and you must be willing to do whatever it takes, and let God be your guide. As our dear friend Benjamin Wright Jr. says, Benjamin Wright Jr., before he does a string session, he said he asks the Holy Spirit to direct him in doing the
Yes.
charts. And that's what I do. I ask the Holy Spirit to order my steps, and that I would be an impact.
Right.
And I'm interested to leave. There's a lot of people I need to talk about, yes, but the most important thing I want to actually remind people that they can do great things, but they must be willing to study and do it their best.
Awesome.
That's it,
Amen.
really.
That's a good word. Study to show yourself approved. There's so much information in books and online. Take a moment,
Mm-hmm,
read,
mm-hmm.
go online, search, and just study and perfect the craft, the career that you're in. Thank you so much. This has
Yes,
been,
improve your craft. It's a
yes,
great pleasure, my dear. It's a
this has
great
been
pleasure.
amazing. It's always good to
Yes,
see you, and it's always great to talk to you. And I can't wait for you to come back.
yes. And my class closing word is peace and love. Peace and love. And may God richly bless you as always and shine.
Thank
Amen.
you so much. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And
Yes.
on that note, we will say, see you again soon.
See you again. Pleasure. Bye
God
bye
bless.
now. God bless you.
Thank you
Bye
so
bye.
much.
Bye.
Take
Yeah,
care.
you're
Bye
welcome.
bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.